If he's always on your mind, even though you haven't heard from him in days, weeks, maybe even months, that says a lot more about your emotional investment than it does about the actual relationship. And I want you to really take that in, because what often happens in situations like this is that we confuse emotional intensity with emotional intimacy. Just because someone makes you feel something deeply doesn't mean that they're present in your life or that they're actually giving anything meaningful back. You're not emotionally connected to the reality of who he is and what he's showing up as. You're emotionally tied to what you wish he would be, the version of him that you've built in your head. You're imagining the conversations you could be having, the effort he would be making if he felt the same way, the chemistry that should be there if only he gave it a chance. That imagined version of him, that's the one you're thinking about. That's the version that's always on your mind. But here's the hard truth. When someone isn't communicating with you, that's part of who they are. Their lack of effort is information. Their absence is a statement. And yet, we tend to ignore that, don't we? We zoom in on that one beautiful conversation you had 3 months ago, or the way he looked at you that one time, or how connected you felt, and we give that one moment more weight than all the silence that came after. It's because we want to believe that those moments meant as much to them as they did to us. So we replay them, obsess over them, hold on to them like they're proof that we're not crazy for feeling what we feel. But what's actually happening is we're feeding an illusion, one that's comforting but ultimately disempowering. You're in love with potential. You're hooked on a highlight reel. But the reality, the real version of this person, isn't showing up. He's not texting. He's not calling. He's not making an effort. He's not investing. And when someone consistently shows you that they're not interested in deepening a connection, you have to believe them, not just listen to the words you wish they'd say. And I get it. It's hard because emotional investment doesn't always make sense. It's not logical. You might feel this insane connection. You might think, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. And maybe that's true, but strong feelings aren't a reliable measure of a strong relationship. They can be misleading. They can be based on fantasy. They can be built entirely inside your own head. You might find yourself defending him in your mind. He's just busy. He's not great at texting. Maybe he's just shy. Maybe he doesn't know how I feel. But ask yourself this: when has someone who truly wanted you ever left you confused? When has someone who genuinely wanted to build something with you ever left you in the dark about where you stand? We accept excuses because they give us hope. Hope is powerful. It can carry us through heartbreak. But hope without evidence, that's just self-deception. That's how we stay stuck in cycles that drain us. That's how we end up feeling like we're not good enough. And this part is key. When you're constantly thinking about someone who's not communicating with you, you're handing over your emotional energy to someone who hasn't earned it. You're pouring your attention, your heart, your time into someone who isn't even aware of the impact they're having on your daily life. Or worse, they're aware and they still don't care to reach out. You have to be really honest with yourself here. Are you building a future around someone who isn't even showing up in the present? Are you romanticizing what could be while completely ignoring what is? Are you settling for a ghost when what you really crave is something solid and real and reciprocal? This kind of emotional attachment can feel like love, but it's not. Love isn't just about thinking of someone all the time. Love is presence. It's action. It's showing up. And if the person you're thinking about isn't showing up for you, then what you're feeling might be more about your unmet needs than about who they actually are. Sometimes we're not missing a person, we're missing connection. We're missing affection. We're missing feeling seen. And when someone sparks even the idea of that in us, we cling to them as the solution. But clinging to someone who's not choosing you doesn't make them the solution. It just postpones your healing. It might feel like you're holding on, but what you're really doing is holding yourself back from peace, from clarity, from love that's actually mutual. And look, I'm not saying that your feelings aren't valid. I'm saying your focus isn't serving you. Thinking about him constantly doesn't mean he's the one. It doesn't mean it's fate. It means you've become emotionally entangled with a fantasy. And now your mind is chasing a story that isn't being written in real time. There's no shame in that. We all do it at some point. What matters is what you do now that you're aware of it. Are you going to keep feeding a connection that only lives in your imagination? Or are you going to turn that energy inward to your goals, your growth, your peace? Because the truth is, the moment you stop chasing potential is the moment you make room for something real. Let go of the version of him you've created in your mind. He's not showing up in your life for a reason. Honor that, accept it, and choose to show up for yourself instead. The fantasy might feel good, but reality is where your life is actually happening. No communication is communication. That's something we tend to forget when we're emotionally attached to someone. We wait, we hope, we replay moments and wonder what went wrong. But in all of that noise inside our heads, we forget to listen to the silence outside of it. Silence is not neutral. It's not nothing. It's a message in itself. And sometimes it's the loudest message you'll ever receive when someone isn't calling, isn't texting, isn't showing up in your life in any consistent or meaningful way. It's easy to convince yourself that there's a reason. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's going through something. Maybe he's just not good at communication. And sure, one or two of those might be true. Life happens. People have rough weeks. But when the absence becomes a pattern, when days turn into weeks and the silence just stretches on without explanation, at some point we have to stop making excuses for what is actually a very clear sign. We crave closure. We crave connection. And when we don't get it, our minds go into overdrive trying to fill in the gaps. But here's the truth. If someone wanted to talk to you, they would. If someone genuinely missed you, they would find a way to tell you. People move mountains for the things that matter to them. They cross time zones, cancel plans, send that message at 2 a.m. when they can't sleep. Communication, when it matters, always finds a way. So why are we still hanging on to someone who hasn't made a move? Because we're afraid of what that silence really means. We'd rather stay in the fantasy than face the reality. Because the fantasy gives us something to hold on to. It gives us hope. It gives us meaning. But the reality, that's painful. It's sobering. It reminds us that we might be more invested in someone than they are in us. And that realization can sting in a way that silence alone never could. But here's the thing, letting go of someone who isn't showing up isn't a loss. It's a reclaiming of your worth. It's saying, I deserve someone who doesn't leave me guessing. I deserve someone who makes me feel chosen, not forgotten. When you hold on to someone who isn't reaching out, you're not protecting your heart, you're putting it on pause. You're waiting for a message that may never come. And every day you wait, you're stealing time from the version of you that could be out there connecting with someone who does want to show up. We have to get better at reading energy instead of reading into words that were never said. Pay attention to effort. Pay attention to consistency. If someone only reaches out when it's convenient for them, or worse, doesn't reach out at all, that's not miscommunication. That's clarity. That's your sign. We just have to be brave enough to stop romanticizing mixed signals and start honoring ourselves with honesty. I get it. It's hard. It's hard to admit that someone you cared about, someone who once said all the right things, isn't following through anymore. It's hard to accept that what you thought was growing was actually fading. But pretending silence means something it doesn't. Only prolongs your pain. It keeps you anchored to a ghost while the world keeps turning. It keeps you emotionally unavailable for the person who would answer, who would be present, if only you weren't so busy holding space for someone else. The stories we tell ourselves in silence are dangerous. They can be beautiful, hopeful, romantic, but they are also often untrue. And no matter how much you replay the last conversation, no matter how many times you check your phone, no matter how hard you try to manifest a message, it won't change the fact that someone who truly cares will never leave you in doubt. Love doesn't live in confusion. It doesn't live in waiting games or unanswered texts. It lives in clarity. It lives in action. It lives in someone making the effort to stay, even when things are hard. Silence, on the other hand, is a decision. It's a decision not to show up, and that's a decision you should respect, not chase. The hardest part is realizing that sometimes the closure you're waiting for isn't coming, and that's okay. Closure isn't something someone else gives you, it's something you choose for yourself. It's the moment you stop needing answers and start accepting reality. It's the moment you look at the silence and instead of asking, "Why won't he talk to me?" you ask, "Why am I still waiting for someone who won't?" Let him be quiet. Let him drift. Let the space between you grow, if that's what he's chosen. But don't fill that silence with fantasy. Don't let it convince you that the story isn't over. And most of all, don't let it keep you from living, because when you stop listening to the silence and start listening to yourself, you'll realize the most important voice in the room has always been yours. You deserve more than uncertainty. You deserve someone who chooses you in the loudest, clearest way possible. Every day, if he's always on your mind, even though you haven't heard from him in weeks or months, it's not because he's special in some mystical way or because there's some cosmic sign telling you he's your soulmate. It's because your heart hasn't let go yet. Your mind is clinging to something that feels unfinished. You're caught in a loop, and it's not about him. It's about something deeper. When there's no communication, but your thoughts are flooded with someone, it usually means there's emotional weight still hanging in the air. Maybe you never got closure. Maybe you never got to say what you really felt. Or maybe you did, but the outcome wasn't what you wanted. And now you're stuck trying to make sense of it over and over, playing imaginary scenarios in your head where it all turns out differently. That loop, that replay, that constant presence of him in your thoughts, that's your heart trying to heal something that still feels open. We often think if we keep thinking about someone, it must be because they're important, but that's not always true. Sometimes we think about people the most, when we're hurting the most, when we're confused, when we're trying to rewrite a story in our minds that didn't end the way we hoped it would. So we stay attached, not to the person, but to the emotional experience, to the hope, to the illusion of what could have been if just one thing had gone differently. That kind of attachment is sneaky because it doesn't always show up as longing. It shows up as daydreaming, as wondering, as questioning. It shows up when you see a couple holding hands and suddenly think of him. When your phone pings and your heart skips for a second, even though you know it's not him. When you're about to fall asleep and for no reason his name just floats into your mind. You didn't ask for it, you didn't want it, but it's there. That's your emotional system still trying to process what feels incomplete. But here's the truth. You don't need closure from someone to move on. You don't need a final text or a perfect explanation or some big dramatic goodbye. You don't even need to understand why they walked away, why they stopped communicating, why they didn't choose you. Sometimes healing happens not because we got an answer, but because we finally stopped waiting for one. The mind wants to keep looping until it finds resolution. That's what it does. It wants to solve the problem. But the heart doesn't need solving, it needs releasing. And there's a difference. When someone disappears from your life, when communication fades and you're left with nothing but silence, your mind goes to war with that silence. It fills it with stories. Was it something I said? Did I scare him off? Did he meet someone else? Was I not enough? Could I have done something differently? And each question just drags you further into the past. But you weren't meant to live in the past. You were meant to live here, now, in the present. And no amount of replaying the past will change the outcome. All it does is chain you to a version of love that exists only in your imagination. And let's be real, when someone is no longer showing up, when they've stopped reaching out, when you're the only one carrying the emotional weight, that's not love. That's a memory of love. Or maybe, if you're honest, it was never truly love at all. Just the hope that it would become love. if given enough time. So when he's always on your mind, recognize what's actually happening. Your heart is still trying to close the gap between what you felt and what actually happened. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to make sense of the pain. But here's where you have to step in and take control. You have to tell yourself the truth, even when it hurts. He's not thinking about me. He's not showing up for me. And I can't keep letting someone live in my mind who hasn't earned the right to be there. This is about emotional self-respect. It's about drawing a line between fantasy and reality, between what you feel and what's healthy. Because the longer you let someone stay in your mind without any real connection in your life, the more you block yourself from the kind of love that actually shows up. The kind of love that's mutual, that's present, that doesn't ghost you or leave you guessing. You deserve that kind of love, but you have to make space for it. And you can't do that while you're still mentally chasing someone who's no longer reaching out. So if he's on your mind again and again, just ask yourself this: what do I think I'm going to find by replaying this? And when you realize the answer is nothing, nothing new, nothing healing, nothing that moves you forward, that's when you can start to let go. Letting go doesn't mean pretending you never cared. It means caring about yourself enough to move forward anyway. It means choosing peace over confusion, reality over fantasy. And it means reminding yourself every time his name floats into your head, I deserve someone who chooses me, not someone I have to chase in my thoughts. Because the moment you stop waiting for the past to make sense, you free yourself to start living a future that does. That's when everything starts to change. Do you ever notice how the mind has this funny way of not letting things go, especially when there's nothing to hold on to? When there's a gap, a silence, an unanswered text, or just this unshakable distance between you and someone you care about, your brain doesn't just accept it, it fills in the blanks. It starts writing stories. It creates a narrative where none exists. And suddenly, you're having entire conversations with someone who hasn't even reached out to say hi. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're desperate. It's because your heart hates a vacuum. It craves connection. And when it doesn't get it, it manufactures it. That's how we end up falling for the fantasy version of someone rather than the real flesh and blood human being who hasn't shown up, hasn't been present, and hasn't done the work to earn the space they're taking up in your mind. We get attached to what we imagine could be, to what it felt like for 5 minutes, to how good it was at the beginning. The emotional high was real. That moment they looked at you like you were the only person in the room, that text that made your heart skip a beat, those moments happened and they were meaningful. But now, what you're clinging to isn't just the memory, it's the fantasy version of how that story could have continued. And when that story doesn't move forward in real life, your mind doesn't say, okay, let's pack it up. No, it says maybe there's more. Maybe they're thinking about me too. Maybe they're just scared or busy or trying to figure themselves out. And that maybe, that's the trap. Because now, instead of living in the present where someone is not texting you, not calling, not showing up, you're living in a story where they could be doing all of those things. Where any day now, they'll realize what they lost, where one magical message will come in and change everything. That story keeps you hopeful, but it also keeps you stuck because hope, when it's rooted in fantasy instead of fact, becomes emotional quicksand. The more you try to hold on to it, the deeper you sink. Let's be honest. When someone is constantly on your mind, but you have zero communication with them, it's not love, it's longing. And longing without action is exhausting. It drains your energy. It robs you of your clarity. And it distracts you from people who would show up, who would communicate, who would make you feel safe, seen, and loved without confusion. But instead, we stay glued to this illusion. We scroll through old messages. We analyze their Instagram stories like we're decoding secret signals. We replay conversations, searching for hidden meaning. We build entire emotional skyscrapers out of one brick of connection. And it's not because we're delusional, it's because we're human. We want to feel connected. We want to believe the story isn't over. But here's the tough truth. If the story was going to continue, they'd be part of it right now. Not just in your head, but in your life, in your inbox, in your plans, in your world. And I get it. It's hard to accept because letting go of the fantasy means confronting the absence. It means grieving something that never fully existed. It means realizing that what you miss might not be them, but how you felt when you were with them. And that's a powerful feeling to walk away from. But if you keep living in that imagined future, you'll miss the present that's trying to get your attention. The people who are showing up, the chances you're not taking, the joy you're not letting in, because your heart is still renting out space to someone who isn't even knocking on the door anymore. So what do? You get honest with yourself. You start separating fact from fiction. You stop letting what could be dominate your thoughts and start focusing on what is. You remind yourself, if they're not reaching out, they're not choosing you. And someone who doesn't choose you doesn't deserve your obsession. It's not about being cold. It's not about shutting down. It's about protecting your peace. Because your peace is too expensive to trade for a fantasy. And your future, that deserves space to grow. Free from shadows of someone who didn't stay. If he's not here, he's not meant to be here right now. And maybe that hurts. Maybe it leaves questions. But you don't need all the answers to move forward. You just need one clear truth. You deserve someone whose actions match the love story you've been playing in your head. And if he won't show up for that role, it's time to cast someone new. If he's on your mind all the time, ask yourself, what part of my life am I putting on pause while I obsess over someone who isn't even present? That question isn't just a throwaway line. It's a mirror. Because when we sit in silence, holding space for someone who isn't showing up, we're not just thinking about them, we're waiting for them. And in that waiting, something dangerous happens. We start putting our lives on hold. I've spoken to countless people who tell me, I can't stop thinking about him. It's like he's in my head all day, every day. And you know what I always ask? What are you doing with your day? Not in a judgmental way, but out of real concern. Because 9 times out of 10, the answer is filled with moments that have been sacrificed. Time not spent pursuing your goals. Energy not invested in your passions. Opportunities missed, not because you weren't capable, but because your mind was elsewhere. Because a huge part of your emotional bandwidth was consumed by someone who isn't reaching out, isn't checking in, and isn't actively choosing you. That kind of waiting, it's sneaky. You're still going to work, seeing friends, doing the things you're supposed to do, but underneath the surface, your heart's got one foot out the door, constantly hoping for a text, a call, a sign. And without realizing it, you start living your life in the in-between dot. You say yes to plans, but spend the night wondering if he'll message. You chase your goals, but with a divided mind. You go on a date, but your heart's still tethered to a ghost. Now here's the truth that's tough to swallow. When someone is constantly on your mind without communicating, that's not love, it's emotional limbo. And the problem with limbo is it looks like stillness, but really it's slow self-abandonment. Every time you pause your own joy to replay that last conversation or analyze why he pulled away or check to see if he watched your story, you're not just thinking about him, you're putting you second. We all do this because hope is addictive. Hope says, maybe he's just busy. Maybe he's thinking about me too. Maybe this silence means something deeper. And hope is beautiful when it's grounded in reality. But when it's built on nothing but your imagination, it becomes a trap. You end up living in a future that may never come, instead of embracing the now that desperately needs your presence. Think about how much life you're missing while you keep revisiting a version of someone who isn't even showing up. The love you want, the connection you crave, the respect you deserve, none of it happens in your head. It happens in real time. And that kind of connection requires 2 people, fully present, fully choosing each other. Anything less is just a one-sided emotional investment, dressed up as romantic longing. You were not born to be a placeholder in your own story. You weren't meant to sit by the window of your life, waiting for someone to come knock. You were meant to live boldly, loudly, unapologetically. You were meant to wake up and pour your energy into what sets your soul on fire, not into someone who doesn't even have the courtesy to say, I'm thinking of you. And if your first thought is, but I can't help it, I miss him, let me tell you this. Missing someone is not a sign you should stay stuck. Missing someone is a feeling, not a decision. You can miss someone and still choose to move forward. You can miss someone and still choose you. In fact, the most powerful kind of growth often comes in those exact moments when your heart wants to reach back, but you walk forward anyway. You know what's really attractive? Someone who doesn't wait to be chosen. Someone who decides, if you're not here, I won't pause my life hoping you'll return. That's not cold. That's not unkind. That's self-respect. That's knowing your value enough to protect your peace, to say, I deserve someone who doesn't just live in my head. I deserve someone who shows up in real life. So next time you catch yourself thinking about him again, for the 10th time today, pause and ask yourself, what can I do in this moment to choose myself instead? It could be as simple as calling a friend, going for a walk, throwing yourself into a project you care about, or even just reminding yourself, I'm worth more than silence. Every single time you take that step, you shift the balance of power back into your hands. You remind your heart that you are not powerless in this. You have a choice. And maybe that's what this whole experience is here to teach you. Not just about him, but about you, about how much you're willing to tolerate, about how long you'll wait, about how deeply you value yourself. Maybe it's not about what he feels or why he disappeared or whether he's coming back. Maybe it's about you finally realizing you don't need to be in someone's thoughts to be worthy of love. You just need someone who acts on it. So if you've been waiting, hoping, looping thoughts about someone who's gone quiet, this is your moment. Not to send another message, not to create another excuse for them, but to come back home to yourself, because that's where your life is, that's where your power lives, and the second you stop waiting is the second you start living. Let go of the person who's not choosing you so you can finally choose yourself. If he's not reaching out, if he's not calling, not texting, not showing any effort, and yet somehow he's always on your mind, that's not just about him. That's about you. That's about the story you're holding on to, the version of events that you're replaying in your head. You keep wondering, why do I still think about him all the time? But maybe the better question is, why do I allow someone who's no longer part of my life to occupy such a central space in it? You see, the mind has this habit of circling back to what's familiar. It doesn't matter whether it's good for you or not. It just knows it. And that's enough. And in the absence of communication, in the silence, your brain gets creative. It starts fantasizing. It starts scripting messages he could send, imagining apologies, daydreaming about bumping into him and having that perfect moment where everything finally makes sense. And when that doesn't happen, you feel empty. You feel like you're missing something. But here's the truth. He's not on your mind because you love him. He's on your mind because you haven't taken your power back yet. Every time you replay a memory or reread that last message, every time you check his profile or wonder what he's doing, you're reinforcing the idea that he matters more than your peace, that his silence is more powerful than your standards. And I get it. It's hard to let go of someone who once made you feel something real. But feelings aren't facts, and memories aren't promises. What's really happening is that you're feeding a version of the past instead of living in the reality of the present. You're mentally tethered to someone who isn't emotionally available to you. And that tether is costing you more than you think. It's costing you your joy, your focus, your growth. It's costing you the chance to see who's actually showing up in your life. Because when you're stuck on someone who isn't communicating, you don't just miss them, you start missing yourself. You lose sight of your power, your worth, your standards. Let's be honest, when someone wants to talk to you, they will. We make time for the people we truly care about. We find a way, no matter how busy we are. And when someone doesn't, you have to stop making excuses for them. Maybe he's scared, maybe he's overwhelmed, maybe he's just waiting for the right moment. No, maybe he's just not showing up. And that needs to be enough for you to stop waiting. You're not someone to be put on pause. You're not someone to be half loved, half seen, or half prioritized. And when someone doesn't step forward, your job isn't to chase them, it's to step back into your power. It's to say, if I'm not on his mind enough to reach out, then he shouldn't be taking up space in mine. That's not cold. That's not bitter. That's called boundaries. That's called self-respect. That's called deciding that your mind, your energy, your heart, they are sacred. And not everyone gets a seat at that table just because you once shared a spark. You see, healing doesn't always come from closure. Sometimes healing comes from choosing to close the chapter yourself, even when the other person didn't give you the ending you wanted. And that takes strength. That takes maturity. That takes choosing yourself in a world that keeps telling you to chase validation from people who won't even pick up the phone. So here's what you do. You acknowledge the thoughts. You admit, yes, he's still on my mind. Yes, I still feel the pull. But then you remind yourself, a feeling isn't a fact. Just because you miss him doesn't mean you belong with him. Just because you think about him doesn't mean he's right for you. The mind will pull you back into comfort, but growth asks you to go where it's uncomfortable, to let go, to move forward, to fill the empty space with something far more powerful, yourself. You deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation, who doesn't just live in your mind, but stands beside you in real life with real commitment. Someone who texts back, who calls, who shows up. But until that person comes, don't let the ghost of someone who isn't ready keep you stuck. Reclaim that energy. Pull it back from the places where it's been wasted. Put it into your passions, your goals, your friendships, the things that make you come alive again. Remind yourself every day, you are not defined by who chooses you. You are defined by what you choose to accept. And if he's not reaching out, that's your answer. Don't rewrite it, don't rationalize it, just receive it. And then take a deep breath and walk forward. You'll be amazed at how powerful you feel the moment you stop waiting to be chosen and choose yourself instead.